if you clicked on this video, the first part will be what you likely clicked on it for. How to use one of these universal spring compressors. The second part, I'll talk a bit about the 2.3 liter Duratec. But let's get down to business. So yesterday I made a mistake. I was using the universal spring compressor and kind of the way you'd use a normal spring compressor, especially if you're by yourself, and I broke a piston ring. What I figured out was you kind of can't use this like a normal spring compressor because it gets everything gets so floaty that you break a piston ring. I just drove 5 hours to the nearest place in my state that had another set of these piston rings, and I'm making this video right now to show you what I figured out. Okay, first of all, orient your piston, forward. There happen to be arrows on these pistons. Now, I'm doing something right now that pretty much universally everybody will tell you don't do. I'm about to rest the piston on the head by the oil ring. Only rest it there. Do not apply any pressure whatsoever. Do not try to slide it in. Just rest it there. This is specifically when you're using this type of piston ring compressor by yourself. Next, I opened up this piston ring compressor so big that it'll just slide over all the rings fully expanded. It's got a flared side. Make sure that the flared side is up. And again, this is all just for this universal style. If you got a real piston ring compressor or you have a partner, pay no attention to what I'm doing. Now I've got the flared side up, the flat side down, and I'm going to hold it gently against the head while I tighten the hose clamp all the way. I'm going to tighten the hose clamp, and I'm going to periodically check, because what will happen is where the hose clamp actually is, where the nut portion of the hose clamp is, it'll deform the very flimsy metal of this spring compressor. So I'm going to periodically check what's happening. I'm also going to look inside as it gets tighter, and I'm going to watch my piston rings go into the ring grooves, make sure that none of them try to pop out as I'm doing this. I'm holding it flat with gentle pressure against the head, not scraping my head, not pushing hard, and I'm also... this part here where the spring compressor splits, I'm making sure that it doesn't do that. I'm making sure that that part stays flat as well. All right, back on it. Making sure, I kind of slide it around, make sure that my rings go in their grooves. Making sure the compressor is flat against the head and that split in the compressor is also flush with itself. And I'm going to tighten it all the way down until basically I feel the hose clamp stop and I see the rings fully in their grooves. I'm not going to go any tighter. I'm not going to clamp down on it. Just get it to the point where basically your ratchet just kind of goes and stops. Once you get to that point, it's tight enough. All you're trying to do is get the rings in the grooves. The reason this is different than using a normal spring compressor is the very first step I did, resting the piston on the head by the oil ring, which is a big no-no, and I know you're not supposed to do that. But if you don't do that while using one of these universal spring compressors by yourself, things will move around without you being aware. Okay, so now I just felt pressure, and that's it. Like, that's all I want. I can see my rings are all in my grooves, and I can feel the pressure. I'm going to put a little bit more because it's not quite tight enough. There we go. And that's it. That's all I want. So if you don't do it like this by yourself, then you risk what happened to me yesterday, which was I tightened it the old-fashioned way and then brought it over and everything like you're supposed to and rested it on here and then used the conical top and kind of hammered it down. Well, one of the rings came out of the grooves, and unfortunately it was the second ring came out of the groove. So I physically couldn't see it looking down from above. Doing it this way by yourself with this universal style, I know all the rings are in the grooves prior to starting to hammer it in. I'm just using the plastic end of a dead blow hammer. I am barely applying any pressure whatsoever when I hammer on it. And I'm feeling, and there it is. When the spring compressor pops off, it's fully in. The mistake I made yesterday was everything I just described. This was the way I figured out. I broke this one, and then I kind of checked some others, and in the process, I did this one with the new technique. It went in perfectly, so in the process, I removed these two that I had already put in, and I double-checked that I hadn't broken those rings. Okay, so now, the second part of the video, you can stop now if you don't care. Rebuilding a 2.3 liter Duratec. The biggest mistake I made in this rebuild was in not doing enough research beforehand. And here's why I say that. You've probably noticed already that I'm reusing my pistons. You do not reuse pistons when you're doing a rebuild. Well, here's my issue. I called Ford, I called AutoZone, O'Reilly, Napa, Advanced Auto Parts, I checked Summit, I checked Jags, I checked everywhere. I didn't check Rock Auto. And everybody said universally a 2.3 liter Duratec is not a rebuildable engine. Well, I said bullshit to that because every engine is rebuildable if you know what you're doing. And believe it or not, I do know what I'm doing despite the fact I broke something yesterday. And all I needed to do, I figured, okay, I'm gonna strip this thing down. I lost compression on one of my piston rings on a different cylinder had shit itself, and I knew it had to be rebuilt. It is Friday. I am leaving for a 1,200, 1,500 mile road trip on Tuesday. So I knew 3 weeks ago when I started this project that I had to rebuild this engine. There's no way I was going to take an engine with a piston ring that bad. The compression was super low on one of the cylinders, really badly low. There's no way I was going to take that on that long of a road trip. All right, what's going to happen is I'm going to rebuild this engine whether they say it can be rebuilt or not. All I need to try to do is find bearings. If I can't even find maiden rod bearings, it's possible I'll open it up and, oh gods, I don't want to, but I'll reuse them if I have to. I'll reuse the pistons. I gotta get new piston rings. Well, that's the first thing I did. I found piston rings out there. Sweet, apparently this is somewhat rebuildable because you can do piston rings. Well, if you're gonna do piston rings, you're gonna be disconnecting, connecting rods and whatnot. You might as well do your bearings. Okay, well, let's see about main bearings. Turns out I could find main bearings, I could find connecting rod bearings, and I could find piston rings. That's the point at which I made the mistake. With all that, I should have just saw if anybody out there makes an engine rebuild kit for this engine. Yes, they do. Unfortunately, I didn't learn that an engine rebuild kit existed for this engine until Tuesday of this week, and I'm supposed to leave on Tuesday of next week. There was no way I was getting an engine rebuild kit shipped here to my house in time to put new pistons in. I did all the measurements. The pistons and the cylinder bores all check. Clearances are all good. All the piston rings, as a matter of fact, I even compared the old main bearings to the new main bearings side by side, and you know how you can see the bearing material on the backing material of the bearing? The old bearings were reusable, even by the measurement standards. They were beautiful. This engine's always had all the maintenance done, and you can tell the oil changes have been great. I could have reused them. Well, I already had them, so I didn't. I put new ones in. And when I was searching for the piston ring again here in my home state yesterday when I broke one, that's when I discovered, or no, on Tuesday, sorry. That's when I discovered that there is a rebuild kit made out there. If you're curious, it's by Engine Tech, not sponsored, just they make it, Engine Tech, and Rock Auto sells it. And if I had just known that in advance, I could have ordered it in time to have new everything all in one kit, including new pistons. I can't get it in time now, so I'm reusing my pistons. Not the best policy, however, on a 216,000 mile engine where every single measurement actually checked to within spec. Some of my oil clearance gaps are maybe a hair big, but after this many miles, I'll take 1,000th too big or even 5/10,000ths too big on some of them. Overall, this engine is in amazing shape. I didn't want to reuse the pistons, but I ended up doing it. If you need to rebuild a Duratec engine, it is possible. Do not believe any of the major auto parts stores or your Ford dealer or whoever when they tell you that it's not rebuildable. Now, they can't sell you the parts. That's true. You got to find them yourself. If you're curious, I found it. Engine Tech sells everything I needed, and I could buy it through Rock Auto. But the point being is you can rebuild this engine, and it's not even that hard. The hardest part are the 5 main bearing caps being connected together by a trellis frame. You can look up pictures of that online. I'm not going to flip my engine over to show you that. I just wanted to share with you that information, but more importantly, show you how to use one of these universal piston ring compressors by yourself in a manner in which you won't break any piston rings.